If you're like most homeowners, you've probably Googled your address, checked your Zestimate, and thought, okay, that's what my home is worth. But if I told you that number could be off by tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, what would you think? And more importantly, what your home is worth today might not be what it's worth a month from now. In this video, I'm gonna break down what actually determines your home's value here in Rochester and the Finger Lakes, and the one thing most sellers completely overlook. Hi, my name is Susan Glens. I am the founder and team leader of the Bespoke Homes team with Keller Williams Realty. We are a top 1% real estate team in the greater Rochester and Finger Lakes area of New York, committed to helping our clients sell profitably and confidently. And if you're a homeowner considering selling in the next 6 to 12 months, then you've come to the right place. Let's start with the most important truth. Your home is only worth what a buyer is willing to pay at that exact moment in time. It's not what Zillow or Redfin or any other website says. Not even what our online estimate says when you go to bespokehomes.com. It's not what your neighbor sold for last year, and it's not even what it should be worth based on all of the upgrades that you've done. All of those things do help us predict value, but they don't determine it. And this is where I think a lot of sellers get confused, because tools like Zestimate give you a number without the context around that number, and that context is everything. So let's break down what really moves the needle when it comes time to sell. The first is supply and demand, or what I like to call inventory levels. It's one of the biggest drivers of your value. See, if you list your home when there are very few homes available in your price range and location, then you're stepping into a market where buyers have very limited options, and this creates urgency and competition. And that bidding war environment is what drives prices up. But if inventory increases even slightly, then buyers suddenly have more choices and your leverage starts to shift as a seller. Now, there are two key metrics that we look at in evaluating supply and demand: inventory absorption and months of supply. Now, most homeowners have never heard of these metrics inside of a real estate conversation, but they are some of the most powerful indicators of your home's value. First, let's break down inventory absorption because it sounds very scientific and intimidating. It's simply the sell-through rate of homes. So I tell my clients, I want you to think of the sell-through rate of a product on a retail shelf at Target. For example, if there are 10 Yeti coolers on the shelf, they're going to disappear a lot faster in the summer months, or sell through a lot faster in the summer months than in the winter months, right? Months of supply is an inverse metric, and that tells us how long it will take to sell through the inventory based on the current demand. So if we go back to our Target example, it's critical for retailers to manage how much inventory they stock, because if they overbuy Yeti coolers, they could be stuck with them for a long time come winter. Ultimately, I use inventory absorption and months of supply to educate my clients on what type of market they're entering into based on how quickly homes are selling in their specific market. And I want to emphasize their specific market. It's not Rochester as a whole, right? We're talking about their price point, their town or school district in a lot of cases in our area people shop by, and sometimes their specific neighborhood. Right? We also look at their specific property type. Ranch homes, for example, have a very different sell-through rate than colonials due to aging population and increased demand for single-story living. Ultimately, the market for a $250,000 ranch home on the west side is going to be very different than a colonial or Tudor home for sale on the east side. If homes are selling quickly, which means high absorption rate and low months of supply, then you're in a strong seller's market. And if homes are sitting longer, low absorption rate, and higher months of supply, then buyers have more power. And that directly impacts what your home is worth at the moment you hit the market. So let's move on to another factor, which is professional marketing strategy and how we create buyer competition. So the value of your home is determined by more than what exists in the market. It actually relies heavily on how your home is introduced to the market. The more buyers you attract, the more showings you get, and the more interest that you generate, and the more offers you create, right? Sounds simple. When multiple buyers are competing, that's when the price gets pushed up well beyond what the data alone might suggest. So this is why two similar homes can sell for very different prices, simply based on how they were marketed and positioned. These are a few of the things that I build into my marketing and positioning strategy for my Rochester and Finger Lakes clients to increase the odds of buyer competition. The first is professional photography is a non-negotiable. I cringe when I see listings that have photos from someone's iPhone, or, you can tell it's an amateur that took it, right? Since professional photography is a negotiable for me, I'll consider the use of aerial photographies to highlight acreage or surrounding features like proximity to lakes and golf courses. And I'll also ensure that views are captured, and we take advantage of twilight photography if it's the right feel for the property. Videography is another thing that brings the story of their house and their lifestyle that it affords to life. We consider the audiences that we want to reach through various social media platforms. In addition to photography and videography, I will always look at a strategic list price and will evaluate whether or not the use of delayed negotiations is warranted. And then another strategy that I'll use every single time is a specific plan around broker and network outreach, whether that is a combination of emails, postcards, and direct communications and conversations. So the next thing we should talk about is condition and presentation. And these are maybe more obvious, but often underestimated. You see, buyers buy homes based on emotion, not logic, which means that a home that feels a certain way, right? Move-in ready, clean, updated, and well cared for will almost always outperform a similar home that feels dated or neglected. And sometimes relatively small improvements can create a significant increase in perceived value. I share a full breakdown of a real-life example of this in our video, The Hidden Dangers of Your Zestimate. So make sure you check that out next. Okay, now we're going to pivot to what most people are familiar with, which is comparable sales, or comps. We look at similar homes that have sold recently to estimate value. But here's the nuance. Comps are like a rearview mirror, right? They tell us where the market has been, not necessarily where it is right now and where it's going. And especially in a shifting market, that difference matters. So we also want to look at pending sales. These are the houses that have an accepted offer and are waiting to close. And then we look at active listings as well to determine how to strategically price against them. So when you combine all of this, you can start to see why an algorithm alone can't fully determine your home's value. It's not factoring in real-time buyer behavior, hyper-local absorption and inventory rates, strategic marketing decisions that you make with your agent, right? And the emotional response that your home alone creates. It's giving you one number and sometimes a range, right, based on past data without understanding the present moment in time. So if you take one thing away from this video, I want it to be this. Your home's value is not fixed. It's fluid. It changes based on timing, strategy, and market conditions. And while we can use data to get very close, there's always a human element, buyer behavior, that ultimately determines the final number. My goal is to position your home in a way that allows the market to push the value as high as possible. And that requires several things. It requires understanding your micro market, timing your entry correctly to market, and then preparing your home strategically to create the right level of demand. If you're ready to start your home selling journey and you're seeking expert guidance from someone who is willing to have the tough conversations to create clarity and empower you to move forward, click the link below to connect with my team and get started today. And if you're a discerning homeowner in the Rochester and Finger Lakes area and you found this content valuable, hit the like button and you can subscribe for more content just like this. You can also comment below to share with us any topics and questions that you want us to answer in the future. See you soon.